This is the Ben and Ben Show, a show where we review new music every other week. A couple of months ago, we started this podcast when we discovered that we both had a passion for music. Today, we're going beyond just reviewing music and diving into something a little deeper.
This idea was brought to us by an organization that we're both a part of, Madison Youth Choirs, and it's actually their theme for their concert season, titled Tyrants Fear the Poet. But what does that actually mean?
Well, to start off, it's a line from Amanda Gorman's poem, In This Place. The main idea being what shapes history and how changes have been made. But what we're taking from this poem is when she talked about how tyrants fear the poet. So, Ben, I'm curious, what's the difference between tyrants and poets? Like, what's going on there?
Well, at Madison Youth Choirs, we've had discussions about it, and what really resonated with me is the idea that tyrants are more narrow-minded, and they have to be right. It's their way. Where the poet, they can express multiple viewpoints, and they can express different ideas in ways that others might not be able to.
Someone in our choir brought up a really good point that tyrants want power to themselves and poets want to share the power with others.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah. But to exemplify this and kind of show you what we're talking about, we have gathered a couple artists and songs together to demonstrate this idea through music. So let's begin. In 1971, Gil Scott-Heron would release his R&B album, Pieces of Man. But little did Scott-Heron know, one song on this album would serve as one of the most important predecessors to hip-hop in the history of the genre. That song is The Revolution Will Not Be Televised.
With inspiring lyrics and a rhythmic jam to back him up, Gil Scott-Heron would deliver a no-nonsense piece of street poetry that, to this day, has as strong a message as ever.
It's kind of like an unapologetic wake-up call to anyone, especially some African Americans at the time, who thought they could gain their freedom by sitting on the sidelines. Gil Scott-Heron explains that change will not be brought to them by celebrities, corporations, and the like. The revolution will not be televised explains that freedom is not a spectator sport. To expect change, you have to go after it and fight for it.
Both the sound and the message of this song have been profoundly influential not only upon the musical world, but also the real world.
And alongside other hip-hop legends like DJ Kool Herc and the Grandmaster Flash in Furious 5, he has laid the groundwork for decades of musical expression, whether he meant to or not.
Saying that Tupac left a mark on the world would be a serious understatement. Even to this day, his death in 1996 is striking. But why is a 90s hip-hop artist so impactful almost 3 decades later?
To understand Tupac, let's take a step back to his upbringing and his mother. Afeni Shakur was a Black Panther and imprisoned for her political activities, and just a month before her son's birth was released.
Ms. Shakur influenced her son's political consciousness heavily. However, Tupac and his mother's relationship would one day form cracks, as Ms. Shakur became involved with substance abuse, and this, in combination with having no father figure to look to, would lead to a difficult upbringing as Tupac attempted to find himself in a world of few role models, political unrest, and a thriving hip-hop scene.
Tupac pulled heavily from these experiences to deliver no-hold-barred, real lyrics. With all his flaws, ideas, and messages delivered so powerfully, it's no wonder that he became one of the most recognizable rappers in the 90s, up with the likes of Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Outkast, and many more.
Honestly, it's easier to talk about what Tupac didn't rap about. He talked about violence, poverty, drugs, his mother's drug addiction, and his own contradictions. Perhaps the most impactful part of Tupac is the fact that he was vulnerable. With Tupac, you get an exploration of manhood from different angles where he even admits some of his many mistakes. This is something that is rare in the music industry, especially for hip-hop, even today.
And trust us, Tupac had a lot to be vulnerable about. He served a prison sentence for sexual abuse and was involved with a lot of beef with other rappers, most notably the notorious B.I.G. The hate that Tupac was capable of certainly comes through on the track Hit 'Em Up. But what made Tupac different from the rest of the crowd of rappers involved with court cases was that he talked so openly about it and showed genuine remorse for what he did and taught others to do better.
In so many ways, Tupac is a poet going against the tyrant. Obviously, he strove for equal rights and a better life for African Americans. On top of that, he was a poet fighting against the stereotype of violence and hate in the hip-hop game, and by extension, the rest of the African American community. He showed what hip-hop could do, and that many people wanted to hear more of it, even to this day.
So Ivan Aleskev, whose stage name is Noise MC, quite possibly is one of the biggest and most successful Russian rappers in the game currently. He performs alongside his band, who never failed to lay down some of the most colorful and groovy, energetic beats, which in the current climate of pre-made samples and beats, offers an exciting and refreshing take on modern rap.
Not only that, Aleskev's lyrical mastery is as great as the creativeness and wit of many famous Western rappers. There's millions of Russians that have been moved by his message, and they certainly take a lot away from his music. Enough for him to have spent 10 days in prison for his concerts and face police intervention from those who don't want him to perform.
And once when he was being shut down by police, he ended up freestyling about them. To perform and create art in the face of such adversity shows the bravery Aleskev has. He continues to rap about corrupted social mechanisms and the Russian government, being vocal in the face of great risk and danger.
He voices the views of many who feel oppressed and cast aside by the Russian government, even while the Kremlin tries to silence any dissenting voices. What he's doing is dangerous, and he knows it. But Aleskev continues to be a voice against injustice in what could be seen as an otherwise hopeless situation. It's impressive that he's been able to gain such renown, especially in the current climate.
Aleskev certainly embodies what the meaning of tyrants fear the poet. We've only scratched the surface of Noise MC's escapades into spreading the truth about many Russian events. If you would like to know more about him, a quick search on your favorite music service will give you his entire catalog.
These three artists and songs show music has a way of providing a voice against the tyrant, allowing almost anyone in this day and age to be a poet. Whether you're an R&B artist making his first album in the 70s,
An up-and-coming rapper trying to spread a message in the 90s,
a Russian rapper making music in the face of one of the most oppressive governments in the world,
or just someone with a message to be heard, music remains an effective and powerful reason why tyrants truly fear the poet.
thank you for listening.
This has been The Ben and Ben Show.